Invader number 3.
All right, directly on the chest area. Like you said, 275 pounds, and Invader 3 is in pain.
Invader 3
seriously
has been
hurt.
injured, severely
He is injured. Ricky Rodriguez wants to stop him. Look, the blood is just coming up like showers.
The man has been severely injured.
Welcome back this week to another blood-soaked edition of the Pro Wrestling Review. Okay, I'm Randy Dieter from the Tribune Review.
I'm Brian Krause from the Daily News.
I'm the Super Invader without the mask, and well,
maybe you should take the time to tell our viewing audience what they just saw, just in case.
You mean they don't know what they just saw?
Well, I know they know what they just saw, but maybe just.
Well, this was a collaboration tape of the greatest shoots ever in pro wrestling. Along those lines, whoa, I look pretty good. along those lines, on the tape, it also featured Bruiser Brody, Lex Luger in a match where Bruiser Brody refused to cooperate with Luger, and Luger thus got himself disqualified. It was a cage match, too. The only time in the history of wrestling a cage match ended with a DQ. What else
Luger
was on
actually
the
just
tape?
left the cage.
Yeah, he just climbed out of the cage. Well, I think he shoved the ref, and that was the end of the match. But also on there was a mass transit incident.
Which we'll show you next week.
If you're good, we'll show you next week. It was also Jeff Jarrett laying down for Hulk Hogan at the one pay-per-view, which can be debated whether it was a shoot or a work. You have the Shawn Michaels Bret Hart match from Survivor Series, which who cares what it was at this point anyway. But I really don't have anything to tie it together why we showed that particular clip, just because we're sick bastards. But you know.
Well, I think it goes along the lines of when we showed the Sid Vicious clip, we kind of chuckled at it because, well, hell, it was funny.
Uh-oh.
Well.
Here come the
Okay,
emails.
yeah. Well, make sure you spell my name right. But, you know, the Sid Vicious thing was funny because we've all joked about Sid and how he has no athletic ability, and I think his gruesome injury proved that. But
we're not necessarily laughing at the fact that Sid has, or the injury was grotesque and
if it was
gruesome.
anybody but Sid,
But the thing is, we're laughing at the fact that it was a fairly routine move that Sid somehow screwed up, and look at the result. His foot was dangling.
Yeah, when you jump off the second rope, land on 2 legs, not 1. I think that's the lesson for all the kids at home.
Then you have guys like Jeff Hardy jumping off ladders 50 feet high, as Kevin Kelly would tell you, and not having anything, you know, the feet just stay planted. Sid jumps off a 3-foot rope? But anyway, I'm trying to come up with something here for the poor Invader, who, God rest his soul, didn't die during the match. But probably the most disturbing part.
Check that.
Yeah.
Probably the most disturbing part of that clip we aired, in addition to the fact that he was spitting blood up faster than he could pump it out of his veins, was the fact that Manny Fernandez, the guy in the red trunks with the bushy hair, after he saw the blood, kept doing it. Why the hell did you want to kill him? I mean, Rennie, did he want to kill him?
I don't think so, but I haven't talked to him personally since the incident, so...
It's completely out of the norm. Every time you see somebody injured, like, I remember one of the Villanos being, I think he suffered a stinger or broke one of his vertebrae. I believe it was on Thunder one time, and Raven immediately cradled his neck, and the other Villano came in and kicked the hell out of Raven, you know, because he broke his brother's neck. But why would anybody in their right mind try to, I guess, intentionally injure? I know he was wearing a white mask, but that's no excuse.
The part that we didn't see actually was after he dropped, I think it was 3 knees on him. The first one obviously, you know, started the rupture. Sorry. It's not funny.
I know, it's not.
After the 3rd knee, everybody rushed in the ring. They were getting this guy, you know, like stretcher and everything like that. And so Manny Fernandez he kind of just calmly left the ring and went to the back and probably packed his bags and left the building like nothing happened.
Took a drag of a cigarette and he was on his way.
That was the most, probably the shocking part about it, was the fact that he didn't seem to really care what was happening in the ring.
Well, this
clip, Super Invader.
This clip, I think, is something we can maybe hammer the point home to the kids at home that are fighting on their ladders with hammers and screwdrivers as we speak, is that, you know, these guys, whenever they go and they do these things like this, and somebody like Fernandez does something so stupid as to once somebody throws up 4 quarts of blood, which I know he doesn't actually have in his body, he keeps doing it. These things can't happen. It's very easy whenever just from 2 trained professionals to go into the ring and to screw something up as you would think would be rudimentary as a knee drop from the second rope or the top rope or whatever. But we've seen in the cases like Darren Drozdov where a simple move that guys are trained to take falls, trained to execute these moves, it's very simple for a guy to break their neck or to have blood squirting profusely from one's body. And for the groups like the PTC and different things like that to say these wrestling groups don't take responsibility for what happens. We were just talking about last week the WWF's new ad campaign about don't try this at home, a little bit more caustic commercial this time around.
Yeah, I mean, I would think so, and you drew on this point too, that the fact that if you watch the clip, the first knee drop that he gives him, it doesn't, I mean, it looks, you know, rather normal.
Pretty typical.
Yeah, so that just shows, to the people out there watching and people out there that want to try these moves that even if you think you know how to do them, and even if you say, well, I barely touched him, well, there's a clip right there. The guy, the knee drop barely grazed him, but again, accidents happen.
And maybe for the viewers out there that think we're making light of this or maybe even making fun of it, maybe we are, maybe we aren't to a certain degree. It almost seems surreal, like what you were seeing wasn't happening. I mean, maybe if he would have dropped the knee on him and then he, regurgitated the blood, and if that just ended there, I mean, okay, that's serious. He kept doing it. That alone is worth the price of admission. It's just pathetic, the fact that he tried to physically injure him. Something just breaks classroom wrestling 101 as far as wrestling. You do not try to injure the guy you're with unless,
That's Mexican.
You're a local wrestler. And I don't mean a local Pennsylvania wrestler, I mean any kind of local wrestler, XPW.
What exactly could be going through his mind when the referee's telling him, stop it, stop it?
You know the old saying, like when a bear sees blood, it just rushes, or a shark, it has a taste for blood. So maybe he was a shark.
Too bad he wasn't a better wrestler than that back in his heyday. It would have been nice if he would have had that blood look in his eye all the time. But hey, it was just Invader #1. What do you want?
Rumor has it, though, Steve Blackman was under the mask back then. But, I think I made that rumor up
That's
myself.
what caused that dysentery or whatever he had in South Africa that put him on the show for 3 years. We have clips of that next week. Or the week after. We'll do that after Master.
Welcome back to the tasteless edition of Pro Wrestling Review. And this, I guess, will continue to be the first edition, or the first episode.
Yeah, in fact, we just got documentation here. We are canceled from the Fox Family Channel, Tom. It just came in.
They had naked women on there the other night on a game show. I saw it firsthand.
Did they really?
Yes.
Fox Family.
They had, what's his name? The guy who was in the Poseidon Adventure, the ugly guy.
Ernest Borgnine.
Ernest Borgnine. He was wearing a thong. I kid you not. I'm serious. I mean, granted, his looks have kind of improved with age. He's got salt and pepper hair now.
How so?
He's gotten fatter. That's because his face is more decrepit. You can't see the actual features. But what the hell? We might as well just lash out at everything we hate, ever have.
This is still not really off the subject, but it kind of is at the PTC. Celebration for wrestling fans everywhere. Get your cakes out now. WWF SmackDown is no longer the #1 most despicable show on network television. It's now Boston Public, and SmackDown's #2. That just came out last week. So, rejoice.
Only #2?
Only #2.
I would have assumed that MTV's Claymation.
No, actually, that wasn't on. I don't think that was on there.
What about the TV show Undressed on MTV? I mean, there's people running around undressed, and granted, that's kind of cool at times, especially. I don't know.
Well, we're gonna cut them off there, but
thank you.
We're gonna come back and try to give you something more interesting.
Kosher.
Yeah, something a little less crude as Super Invader. So, come back if you dare.
The Invasion pay-per-view, which took place, and there's been some mixed reviews about the show. Some people, it seems like it's people either really liked it or just really didn't like it. It was sort of one or the other. So I don't know what you guys thought.
Well, I mean, I think, the matches that they had announced for Invasion already, they had done a decent job building them up. Obviously, with the inaugural Brawl was their big, money match, so to speak. But I think one thing that really killed the pay-per-view, and Brian, you can probably attest to this being there live, that the matches that they added at the end are just, like bonus matches. Bonuses were supposed to be good. These were horrible. The six-man tag with Big Show, Albert. I mean, why? I would have rather seen somebody, come out and cut a promo for 25 minutes. And I hate that on Raw when it takes up a half an hour worth of a promo. But again, I would rather see that than a six-man tag that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, and really the reaction from the fans was just as you said. It was like, it wasn't even apathy. It was like, please, let's do something to stop this. I mean, the reaction wasn't good. And especially when they showed the WCW team on the Titantron during Heat, everybody was sort of like, well, who are those three guys? Because unfortunately, nobody knows who they are. Even though Stasiak was meat for a while. Yeah, Canyon, Stasiak, and Hugh Morris. But
on the other end of that, on the pitiful side of Invasion, I guess you could call it, you had a good main event. You had a good match. Imagine that, a good match with Rob Van Dam.
Yeah.
Match that stole the show. And a couple other good matches, don't really know. So all in all, like you said, Invasion, probably a mixed bag. I think that would be a fairly accurate description. Of course, the events on Raw that following night on, well, I guess it would be a Monday, wouldn't it?
It was a Monday.
I'm a little desensitized from the clip we saw at the beginning of the show, but Invasion was a good show.
You touched on the Rob Van Dam match, and he's been a target on this show from time to time. It actually was a target of my column on the website last week. Rob Van Dam actually did put on a very good performance at the pay-per-view, and I don't know if that was maybe some of the WWF officials working with him and kind of planning out the match for him a little bit more. Although, a WWF official can't prevent him from screwing up moves in the ring, and that's something that he didn't do. He did. The first couple things didn't look so crisp, but after that, he was very much on. His offense looked good. It was believable. I give him a lot of credit.
Well, not to rain on RVD's parade, but he and Jeff Hardy did blow one spot when Jeff Hardy tried to. And I never understood why Jeff Hardy kept doing this spot, because they've taken the guardrails and they've made them like this wide as opposed to this wide, and so they kind of just collided and went their separate ways. And I think Van Damme even mouthed in the camera, "That's one."
But you know what? It doesn't matter, because when it happened, the whole group of people we were sitting around, and a lot of them were press members, when it happened, everybody's screaming, "What a great move." And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, why? Because they both fell into the crowd? It was not even close. Somebody could have really been seriously injured. But, it doesn't matter. As long as the collision looks good, people don't care.
Well, speaking of seriously injured, if you watched the end of the bra and panties match, which I'm sure you had your binoculars out for, if you watch Trish just kind of walking back, celebrating with Lita, and she almost falls off the edge.
Yeah.
Lita actually had to grab her physically by the arm and yank her back up. So I thought that was a nice touch to, the ending of that match.
Yeah, really. And another match, too, that even though all 4 women in a move botched every single move they did, it didn't matter. So, nobody in the audience really cared. My wife actually went with me to the pay-per-view.
Don't give it personal information out on this show.
I owe her a lot of money now to actually make her go to that. But she got a big laugh out of all the people in the audience reacting to the bra and panties match. She thought that was kind of amusing. And it was, just the testosterone and the prepubescent squeals.
What, from Michael Cole?
Yeah.
What was funny, on the pre-show, and you were there live, like Rennie said, what was it, Chavo Guerrero Jr. and Scotty 2 Hotty in a match I thought was actually going to be fairly decent. Was that the match?
Yeah.
I'm surprised how awful it was.
It was all right. Yeah,
I realize the two haven't worked together with each other very often, but I mean, I think Scott Taylor's a talent. And Chavo obviously is a great wrestler. They didn't seem to gel. And when I saw the match on the free-for-all, or whatever the hell they call the pre-show now.
I think it's called Sunday Night Heat.
It hasn't been called the free-for-all in 12 years, but I was just like, oh, God, here's a preview of things to come with Invasion. But I was pleasantly surprised.
Well, you know what? Notwithstanding the Chavo-Scotty match before on Heat, that's what they call it now, Heat.
Free-for-all, shut up.
Whatever. But anyway,
the Slam Jam.
One thing, and I mentioned when I reviewed SmackDown the week before the pay-per-view, was the fact that SmackDown featured some variation of the pay-per-view matches, which gave the guys a chance to work with their opponents. And so I think that helped. You can look at another match, Billy Kidman against X-Pac.
Yeah.
Wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be, but it was still, considering X-Pac and obviously Kidman, who I think is a superior talent. The match was very good. I thought it was very good.
Yeah, and the other thing actually with Kidman, which is a little bit of a lesser point, is they've changed his look. If you've noticed, he now wears like the black trunks with some sort of trim on the side, and that's sort of, I guess, WWF's effort to make everybody look a little bit more major league. And I can't really disagree with him. They did the same thing with Just Incredible, and they did the same thing actually with Raven for a little while, but he's sort of back to wearing the jeans. Then again, he's
ECW now, Brian.
Yeah, but just sort of fixing his look so he doesn't quite look so bush-league. And for a guy as talented as Billy Kidman, do everything you can for him.
Well, the running joke the early part of this week was the fact that Raven wrestled at the pay-per-view against Regal in an awful match, wrestled on Raw against I don't even know whoever in another awful match, and wrestled on the SmackDown tapings in another awful. What was it? Who did he wrestle on SmackDown?
That was okay. It was
a tag match.
Yeah.
Well, but the thing is, Raven screws up 2 big matches, so what do? They keep having him wrestle. Where guys like Jerry Lynn, who don't even get TV time and is a superior athlete, could have a great match with anybody out there besides Billy Gunn or Steve Blackman, and he's not on TV.
Yeah, actually, we should point out at the SmackDown tapings in Pittsburgh this past week, Jerry Lynn got a very good crowd reaction.
That was from me, though.
Yes, Tom was very boisterous, and I'm proud of you. But really, there's support for him, so why not use him?
Well, I mean, they missed the boat big time on Jerry Lynn with the whole ECW Invasion thing, and I think jacked and dark matches and things of that sort are supposed to be safe for guys like K-Quick, who are still trying to craft their character. K-Quick's gone from good guy rapper.
How can you craft a character as a rapper? Look at
Work
Ian
with me
News.
on this one.
No, I refuse. How can Paul New supposedly try to craft a character as a rapper?
What I'm saying is now he went from a fun guy rapper to telling everybody to kiss their ass rapper.
Oh, so he's like a death row rapper now, as opposed
Whatever
to like
works,
a Sir Mix-a-Lot rapper.
Whatever works for you to at least.
You know what would work for me if K-Quick would just disappear? Jimmy Hoffa-esque, just disappear.
Point being,
Yeah.
that
No point.
Point being that I don't think Jerry Lynn belongs in dark matches because I don't think there's anything left to craft. Which you know, the WWF, when they hired Jerry Lynn, you knew what you were getting, a great talent, a guy that you might have had to work with a little bit on mic skills, but still, he does no way belong in dark matches.
You guys had a chance to talk to Jerry Lynn before the Smackdown. I mean, what did he feel about that? I mean, he can't be real happy.
Well, you know what? When I talked to Jerry about it, there was a WWF official hovering over us.
Oh, I see.
So he was, you know, but then the guy did happen to leave. He got a phone call, so. You know what? I think we're out of time. So yeah. You know what? We're going to save the story. I'm going to tell you about what Jerry Lynn had to say about his WWF tenure. So we'll do that when we come back.
But anyway, we're here now and we're here to stay, at least for the next 4 segments. And we'd like to talk a little bit about Raw and the events on Smackdown, which hasn't aired yet as of this taping, but I'm sure it will as of Saturday, unless something is very, very wrong here. But what we failed to bring up in the last segment was the fact the main event of Invasion was, you know, obviously Austin turning heel, which made about as much sense as a quarter roll to me. I never understood why you roll quarters, but, you know, that's for another time. It just, to me, Austin turning...
I could see not rolling pennies because they're not worth it.
To me, Austin... turning on the WWF, and you brought this up, with Angle winning the WCW World title, like you said, couldn't they just go up to each other and, oh, here you go, here's your belt, I got this by mistake.
I'm sorry, I got this in your bag by accident.
Coupled with the fact that because Austin did turn heel on the WWF, doesn't that kind of overshadow everybody else in WCW, like a Booker T, or who's the other lead guy, Page, who, well, he needs to stop anyway.
See, I don't think it overshadows Booker T only because they're teasing dissension between Austin and Booker T.
They just formed. How the hell can they have this tension already?
A little bit, not enough to, you know, warrant a feud, but you know, when you see SmackDown, or you've already seen SmackDown, but Austin went ahead and volunteered Booker T's services in that match against Angle. So I don't know. That's a judgment call. I disagree with Austin turning because it was predictable, but sometimes, you know, the most predictable things are what you're supposed to do. But the other thing too is he went to WCW and he really didn't. His past career in WCW there wasn't much to talk about. He got screwed over. So I think him staying with the WWF might have been a little bit better. And maybe have The Rock come back and join WCW because technically he's never been there, even though...
Well, see, I think there's a problem. The only problem with that, I agree with you, the shock value would have been a little bit better. But here's your problem. Rock's got a feature film coming out next April. It's a WWF promoted film.
Heels don't sell tickets.
Yeah, and
that is so asinine.
Yeah, I agree with you, but that's the WWF's philosophy, is that if he's a bad guy, they can't promote the film correctly. You know?
I totally agree, but...
Turn him heel real quick.
It's going to suck. I mean,
I totally agree, but the fact that a guy has a new CD coming out or is rapping with a child rapper doesn't mean he should turn heel or turn face.
Well, yeah, but you're talking about a couple $100 million well, probably not that much, but I mean, a multi-million-dollar project here that they stand to make a lot of money off of.
He's a Scorpion King.
I realize. And he actually is a heel in the movie, too, which we really probably should be
pointing out. Well, then that kind of offsets it, you know, because Zeus was a heel in No Holds Barred.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. No, I'll stop right there then.
Why don't you save the No Holds Barred review for next week when we have it scheduled?
No problem.
Jumping the gun.
We do have that penciled in. We should point that out. Come back next week for the No Holds Barred
marathon.
Yeah, it's going to be good. And we're actually at the end of the show, Jim's going to fight Zeus. That's why he's not here this week. He's
in training actually.
Yeah.
He's swimming the laps, running the miles.
He's drinking gasoline with Hulk Hogan. But you'd have to be. I don't know. You would have had to have been around in 1985 to understand that one, but. I can understand the point of Austin's turn kind of being predictable, but the only thing I didn't really like about it was his explanation the following night on Raw. What the hell?
Not appreciated? That's even more lame than his WrestleMania excuse.
I'm sure they could have come up with some sort of other reasoning, money or something like that, but it seemed really obvious that Austin's promo wasn't very well planned out, because like halfway through it seemed like he had no clue what he was going to say next.
You noticed that too?
Yeah. Half my brain was shut off when I noticed it. It just wasn't a good thing, and that's a snafu the WWF usually doesn't commit. Mm-hmm. But
one of the things too, since we're on the subject of giving promos or cutting promos, one thing I really think that they have to kind of pull back on are Stephanie and Shane cutting promos that don't mean anything. They take turns saying the same exact thing.
Right.
At least Heyman goes out there. I mean, the SmackDown before the pay-per-view aired, he cut a promo about Vince McMahon Sr. and gave last rites to WWF. I mean, you can judge whether or not it was, worth watching, but it was different. Yeah. Whereas Stephanie comes out and Shane will come out and they'll say the same thing. We invested all our money. I mean, I'm tired of hearing that already. Yeah, so if you don't have anything relevant to say, then don't say anything at all. But with that said, Shane McMahon's promo on SmackDown was good because it did kind of tease whether or not The Rock was going to come back and join the alliance.
The other thing about Stephanie McMahon, and I mean, you would have to have gone to a WWF live event to really understand this. If you think her voice is annoying on television, Hearing her over the loudspeakers at Mellon Arena or wherever, oh my God, there were dogs barking blocks and blocks away. You know, it's kind of shrill.
One of the low points of the pay-per-view, well, in my eyes anyway, was the commentary. You have Michael Cole doing play-by-play and Ross doing color. That alone is a sacrilege. And Cole's constant claims of, if they win Invasion, if they win the inaugural Brawl, the face of the WWF will never be the same again. Well, I watched Raw and I went to Smackdown and it looked the damn same to me. So, Michael Cole, you're wrong.
One of the points that was brought up while I was watching Raw was that, why not when you show the beginning montage of Raw, with, which still features Steve Austin and the Dudleys.
Right.
That's picky, but again, if you want this
yeah.
Invasion thing to take shape, you want people to actually see WCW and ECW as a legitimate threat, why not either take them out of the montage or have the montage air and have it be interrupted with an ECW, WCW beginning?
Yeah.
And that maybe will condition fans to expect a TV show from them sometime either late this fall or maybe sometime early next year.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, perception is everything, and as important and as big as it is for Steve Austin to have joined this coalition, and hopefully, as we've said, hopefully the explanation gets a little bit better. You do want to do small things like that. I mean, the little graphics whenever they come to the ring is one thing, but yeah, something like that I think definitely would hammer the point home. And
yeah, I mean, like Raw's beginning aired, and Ross was doing commentary. Is this the drastic change? I mean, there wasn't anything, and I think that's what people were expecting. I mean, Raw's ratings were up from the last week, but again, that was coming after a pay-per-view of the magnitude of Invasion.
Right.
But again, they preached an Invasion, like Tom said. If WCW, ECW wins this, then big things are going to happen. Nothing big happened.
Right.
Austin gave us a lame excuse, and Raw was pretty much just another show.
Well, I don't know who said the word hammer home, but I kind of like that little cliche, so I'm going to use it here. You have the new coalition alliance, whatever they call it. You have the world champion Steve Austin in that. You have the intercontinental champion Lance Storm in that. You have, who else? The hardcore champion. The title doesn't really mean anything. Right. The WWF, if anything, should be down on, not their luck, so to speak, but should be down in this war right now, and they're not. As a result, you see just the same damn thing happening. You have the commentators, you have the opening. It just, if anything, and this is a little picky, I'll admit, but maybe WCW and ECW or the coalition or whatever, maybe they should be like putting the guys like in the WWF through the ringer, making matches that just down on their luck. I don't know of any other way to say that. It seems like nothing has changed.
Yeah, the coalition or the alliance, whatever you want to call it, does need to take more control of the program. I don't know how that happens. I mean, maybe there's a match you set up as a main event on Raw. We get control of Raw next week or something like that, where they can at least come out and do like what Shane and Vince and guys used to do, where they come out and they would book the whole show in the beginning of Raw. Do something like that. And that's where, Randy, maybe the new intro could come in, where you can just do something that you don't necessarily have to use every week, but something you can kind of work with.
I mean, even with the intro, if that's all it was, at least people would have said, maybe they're taking Raw over or do something drastic like that, and we didn't see that. But we're going to come back, and we're going to talk a little bit more about things that happened on Raw and SmackDown in Pittsburgh, so stay with us. When we said that, we meant pay-per-view match, so the actual answer we were looking for was Savio Vega and Waylon Mercy, which was a barn burner, to say the least.
Isn't that where Waylon Mercy tore his knee?
Yeah, and that was pretty much done for him. But anyway, at what event did the late Terry Gordy wrestle as the Executioner? And we gave you a hint that he wrestled The Undertaker. That was at In Your House 12, or December 1996, for the people who live on this planet. The third question, what was the Intercontinental title match at the 1993 Royal Rumble? It was Shawn Michaels versus Marty Jannetty. Interesting note about that, if you watch the match, Jannetty gets posted with the left shoulder, and he sells the right shoulder, just in case you want to watch that. And the question from last week's show, who were Terry Gordy's two most famous freeboard partners? They were Michael Hayes and Buddy Roberts. This week's winner is Chris Lenhart from New Eagle, PA. So congratulations, and Brian will tell you what you've won in Spanish.
Well, Chris, you have won.
I didn't say Spanish voice.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I took 3 years of it, and I can't do it. Chris, you've won from Original Pizza Works in Javosburg. One large pie with one topping, an order of chicken wings, and a 2-liter bottle of carbonated beverage. And hell, I know it's a long drive from New Eagle, but trust me, the pizza's worth it, Chris, so go and get it right now, or when you get the brochure, whatever.
And this week's question, which I'm being fed to right now, which will probably be wrong anyway.
You look like John Fetko when you do that.
It was, what was Mankind's first match, first pay-per-view match in the WWF? What was it? So answer that question, the 3 on the website, which we promised to update soon, eventually, sometime in the near future.
They're updated.
Oh, they are? Oh, hey, go answer them now then. Answer those 3, the question, answer that, send it to, go to ProWrestlingReview.com. You'll find everything you need right then and there. And
including the meaning of life.
Well, that's not there. That's on my site. So go to the website. Oh, the question once again. What was Mankind's first WWF? I'm reading it.
Oh, okay.
I only have an earpiece. What was Mankind's first WWF pay-per-view match? So hopefully you know that, because I sure as hell don't. And just send the answers, prowrestlingreview.com. Happy answering, and we hope to hear from you.
Holds barred, but we're also going to have our tribute to Waylon Mercy, and we're all going to wear flower shirts and crush bugs on our forearms. But getting back to Raw and the events that happened there, and we're going to talk a little bit too about Smackdown from the Mellon Arena, which was attended by all three of us.
Well, before you get into that spiel, 2 segments ago we promised something from Jerry Lynn.
Oh yeah, Jerry. Much like the WWF, I forgot about him.
How could you forget about?
You saw me with him. We were like, buds.
Well, you're on a first name basis with him. I still refer to him as Mr. Lynn, obviously, but if that is your real name,
well, I think you were trying to. Why were you diving in his bag? You looking for those tights that he has, the new red ones, or?
I was looking for knee pads, but you shouldn't say stuff like that on camera, you moron.
I forgot about the knee pads thing, but no, actually, Brian, you brought up the question about whether or not Jerry felt slighted about not being in the ECW angle, and when the WWF guy finally left us, we were able to talk, and he did say, he felt a little disappointed about it. He felt that, what he did in ECW, and I think, actually, to use his words, he said, I lost a lot of sweat, a lot of blood, and had a lot of broken bones for that company, and they still passed me over as being part of the alliance. And he said a lot of the boys, which is a term used to refer to wrestlers in the locker room, they were also upset about it too. So I think it's a legitimate gripe. Jerry Lynn, the guy's a former world champion. He had classics with Rob Van Dam, and those matches carried pay-per-views for ECW. So I really think it's a disappointment that Jerry Lynn was not included with the ECW group. Given his background, and it's a shame.
Well, like we mentioned, whenever he wrestled, actually it was on the Heat tapings. No, actually it wasn't even on Heat tapings. It was a dark match, against K Quick. Got a great reaction from the crowd. I mean, it wasn't just like your typical, the babyface won reaction. It was a very legitimate, warm reaction for Jerry Lynn. I just don't get why they don't use him more. I mean, maybe he's a little vanilla, but you could easily stick him into this Invasion angle, put him into some light heavyweight matches.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, because Jerry actually did, when I mentioned to him about not being in the Invasion, he told me, he said, well, it wouldn't make sense now if I was put in it. And he elaborated, continuing saying that he went to talk to one of the writers who, quite frankly, have nothing to do with him, he said. They have no ideas what to do with Jerry Lynn, a guy that talented. And so he said he wouldn't want to be in the alliance now because it's too late. It doesn't make sense for him to join it now.
Yeah. Well, you talk about dissension between, I just want to elaborate on this. Who better to desensitize with? I don't know what the word is. What about dissension between Van Dam and Lynn if they were in the coalition together? My God, that would be great. Then you could have one of them turn on each other and have some classics, wrestling matches on WWF TV. And the other thing I wanted to bring up was, you mentioned that Jerry Lynn's a former ECW world champion. I don't think he would have been if the pay-per-view that particular month wasn't in Minnesota. It's a shame to say, but it's true.
Well, I mean, we talked about it on this show that maybe Jerry Lynn shouldn't have been given the world title because Justin Credible was just starting to build a reign, and they went ahead and switched it just because Jerry was wrestling in his hometown. But be that as it may, he still is a former world champion, and he still should be with the ECW Alliance. And, Jim Ross made a comment on a conference call that you and I participated in, that the guys that you see now with WCW, ECW are going to be the only guys you see for a while because they want to concentrate on getting people over. That's fine, but the last straw, to use an old cliche, is if Jerry Lynn gets sent to Ohio Valley Wrestling. I wouldn't know, if I was in Jerry Lynn's position, I wouldn't know what to do.
Yeah.
Because you're the seasoned pro who knows he deserves a chance, athletically gifted, and now you're going to be wrestling in Ohio Valley Wrestling. It's not right.
Well, I think the one thing Jerry Lynn has against him right now is none of his matches really so far have been very good. I mean, they've been okay, they've been borderline, but for some people talking about Jerry Lynn as being the blow-away talent that he can be, he hasn't shown that yet. But I mean,
has he really had an opportunity to show that yet?
That's the thing, yeah. I mean, and you can't really crap on a guy for a couple of bad matches. You're coming from a guy who wrestled in a smaller ring, who wrestled a different style. You can't just give up on a guy this soon. And, you're right, Randy. I mean, the other thing Ross did mention on that conference call was some of the guys that they don't have a plan with may go to some of the minor leagues. And Jerry Lynn should not be one of those guys.
Here's the thing. When you look to the future of the WWF, you would have to think of guys like the Hardys, Edge and Christian, even a Van Dam. Lynn's in his late 30s. What better guy to teach the younger guys some, just whatever. In Van Dam's case, maybe some pacing, maybe some match psychology. when you look to the future of the WWF, Jerry Lynn would have to be there, just even as a mid-carder, just a good hand in the ring. And by the way, the boss man is not a good hand in the ring. I don't care who says it or who believes when they say it. Jerry Lynn would be a definition of a good hand in the ring.
We know one thing too about Jerry, and I think this goes back into his ECW days. When we were talking, we were talking about Rob Van Dam, and he said, great talent, right? Just as Van Dam walked by, and they too exchanged a little bit of words. I don't mean like they
were gonna go
clashing, but one of the things I think if you go back and watch the matches between Lynn and Van Dam, Jerry Lynn was the guy that added a little bit of pacing to those matches. Again, you're not going to be able to stop Rob Van Dam from doing things like Van Terminators and Van Daminators and Van whatever the hell else he wants to do. But again, look at the match. You'll see Jerry Lynn. He puts a little bit of pacing in, maybe a few rest holds, which I know Van Dam's not a big fan of, judging by his work. And this goes back on a point that Tom made. Jerry Lynn's a good hand in the ring. He offers good advice. This is a perfect example. He took a guy like Van Dam and was able to produce 3 quality pay-per-view matches with him. I mean, what else can you ask for? And I just hope that the WWF is just biding their time, trying to come up with something for him to do, and eventually going to deliver on something for Lynn, because it's just, it's a tremendous waste of talent right now.
Yeah, they could have a pretty good light heavyweight division going right now of just the WWF and WCW guys battling it out over, not even necessarily a belt, but just over supremacy. And Jerry Lynn should be one of those guys. I mean, Jerry Lynn and X-Pac, 10 years ago in Minneapolis when they were working the independent circuit, they made names for themselves by wrestling each other every single night. I mean, I remember watching those guys on Global back on ESPN in like 90, 91. And out of all the crap on those shows, those 2 guys stood out. So why couldn't they do it 10 years later? And both of those guys are more seasoned. Lynn's been in Japan and ECW. X-Pac's getting better. Why not? It seems logical.
Maybe they'll give him a microphone. He could be a white rapper. Nice change from the black
rapper. He could do the death metal gimmick.
You know what I think it goes back again? The WWF really, if they want to push a light heavyweight division, if they want to get guys like Lynn and everybody else involved, they need to sit down, map out a plan, take the time to get these guys over, because you know what? They're going to look at it and say, well, the rating for this particular segment with a light heavyweight match in it was lower. So what?
Right.
Fans are just going to have to get used to watching wrestling. There's no more Vince Russo. There's no more Ministry of Darkness. There's no more Blood Knives.
Unfortunately.
Tough.
Yeah.
We want to see wrestling. Light heavyweight division can do that. So, like I said, hopefully the WWF has something in the works, but we'll just have to wait. But we're going to come back and we're going to talk a little bit more about Smackdown from this past Tuesday at the Mellon Arena. So come back.
Monday night, The Rock will be returning to the WWF.
Yippee-ki-yay!
Yeah. Tom immediately leaped out of his seat and knocked out one.
Ran for the nearest toilet to throw up in.
No, you know what? He went to a concession stand to buy that "Finally the Rock has come back to Pittsburgh" shirt.
Hey, you just keep talking, buddy. When them cameras stop rolling, guess who's driving you home, or lack thereof?
Yeah, but The Rock will be returning, and of course the big story surrounding his return is what side is he on? It's the old.
Who cares? Yeah.
We know what side he's going to be on. Obviously, he's going to side with the WWF, even though Vince suspended him a couple months ago.
So he could go film a movie, which was very coincidental, I might add.
Yes, very, very much a coincidence. We're going to see him come back, and I don't know what they're going to do. I'm sure they're going to tease what he's going to say, because obviously Shane McMahon on SmackDown pitched a roster spot for him in the WCW ECW alliance. So I guess you're going to kind of have the fans being pulled on the big emotional tug of war. Will he go with WCW? Will he go with the WWF? We know what he's going to do.
But again, I mean, I think the WWF is doing something right, and I posted a column this week on the website about this. The fact that, you don't see things being promoted anymore on TV or for pay-per-views because there's so much TV, there's so many pay-per-views. So one thing that they've done, whether it would be with the return with the old Stone Cold Steve Austin or now with The Rock, they're actually making people wait till this Monday. I mean, there were people buzzing around all day in Pittsburgh saying, well, someone told me The Rock was going to come back tonight, and obviously I laughed.
Yeah.
But one of the things that they have gone away from is the fact that making people wait for things. Have The Rock come back on Monday. Yeah. Have him not decide who he's going to side with, even if we know it's going to be the WWF, and even if we know SummerSlam is going to be Rock and Austin. At least tease the fact that The Rock might consider joining WCW or ECW. Have him come back on Raw, have him wait till 2 weeks before SummerSlam to make his decision. I mean,
I don't think they'll do that, though.
No, of course not, but that, to me, would be the best way to do things with The Rock.
Well,
that makes sense.
This past year's WrestleMania, I was one very critical of, before the match actually occurred, of Rock and Austin, and I basically said I didn't care who won the match or even if they fought. And I'll retract that statement. When I'm wrong, I admit I'm wrong. It was a damn good match. But the thing about The Rock that I really don't like about him, whether he was wrestling Chris Benoit mainly or anybody else, he made the guys' offenses look weak. And now, with trying to get guys over from WCW and ECW, the Coalition, the Alliance, whatever you want to call it, The Rock has to basically, he can't make these guys look weak when trying to get them over. I mean, say he's wrestling a Sean O'Hare, who has, in my eyes, unlimited potential. If he, I'm not going to say refuses to sell, because The Rock does sell, but certain things, certain mannerisms he does in the ring just lead you to believe that, oh wow, this guy can't take The Rock, or, you know, from a wrestling standpoint. I realize that wrestling's predetermined, as they call it today. But the thing is, in trying to get these guys over, The Rock has to be able to cooperate with these guys and work a good match with them, albeit he is going to win. He has to win. But he has to give these guys their time, their spots, their whatever, too. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I mean, I never saw The Rock as someone that was an egomaniac that didn't want to let somebody else get their spots in. I think what you're talking about is more or less along the lines like when Chris Benoit gives him 4 German suplexes and he starts to elbow out of the 5th one. I mean, to me, he makes a valid point in the fact that he should sell that offense, and it goes back again, and The Rock's not the only person that's guilty of this. Like, for example, when Benoit has somebody in a crippler crossface, for some reason, when there's no referee or it's after a match, Rock will tap out in 5 seconds. But when the referee's right there in position, The Rock somehow makes it to the ropes. And it's frustrating because we all love Chris Benoit. He's a tremendous talent. So, I mean, I can see where you're coming from. But The Rock isn't the only person guilty of that.
Obviously not. And maybe this stems a little bit from the fact that Chris Benoit is probably my favorite wrestler this side of Ric Flair in his heyday. But the thing is, like you mentioned, the 4 for 5 German suplexes he just elbows out of, that doesn't make for good match quality.
Well, one other thing, just to get away from The Rock just a little bit, and just to kind of touch on something you mentioned earlier, Rennie, is getting people sort of buzzing and getting people excited about the product. The one thing I can bring up is, at the end of Invasion, after Steve Austin made his heel turn, the thing I kept thinking about, because comparisons have been made to this, is when Hogan joined the NWO. And if you remember when Hogan joined the NWO, that night at Bash at the Beach, he cut his promo on the spot. And it was Nash, Hall, and Gene Okerlund and Hogan, and he explained why he did what he did and things like that. So whenever you shut up the pay-per-view that night, you knew the answer. So I was kind of wondering if whenever Austin did that, if he was going to right then and there grab the microphone and start explaining himself, and he didn't. But actually, I think that was probably the right move. Of course, in hindsight, the awful promo he cut the next night didn't help. But leaving Gunn's Arena that night, that was all anybody was talking about. It wasn't like people were just, disgusted he turned, disappointed. Everybody's like, oh my God, what's he going to say? Why did he do this? We got to watch Raw tomorrow. And obviously the 5.4 they drew in the ratings this week displayed that there was a lot of people excited and the buzz was there. People wanted to see why it happened. But, that's absolutely true. They do need to start utilizing some of their bigger surprises in that sense.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things too, whether you were at SmackDown Live or you watched it on Thursday, to me, something tells me that the old WWF would have had SmackDown and The Rock would have ran out as soon as the show was about to end, or even worse, had McMahon when he lifted the promo when he lifted the suspension on The Rock would have came back that night. That's what everybody wanted because they're so conditioned to seeing things happen within the span of 2 hours. The WWF does the smart thing, promote Raw, Rock's coming back, draw a nice rating, and build from it.
Right. And you still got guys like, you got Triple H coming back. Whenever he comes back in November, you can build off that return. Chris Benoit, you have him coming back in January, you can build off that return. And hell, let's not forget Rikishi.
Who could? Yeah. And also, wrapping this up a little bit, Rennie's Olympic hero, obviously, Kurt Angle, which we failed to stay for the final main event match. Thank you, Rennie, by the way.
What?
Won the WCW World title, and what Brian explains to me is the igloo just blowing the dome off of the top of the arena.
Yeah, it was like Hogan, seriously. I mean, people were popping his offense. Booker T had him in a chin lock, and he just started doing like the pump in his fist, trying to make the comeback, and the place was going nuts.
Well, let me leave the viewers with this. We were watching the pay-per-view Sunday with one of our mutual friends, I guess you could say, and he compared Kurt Angle to a modern-day Ric Flair. And I'll tell you what, the more I look at Angle, the more how, just as much as a freak as he is, by that I mean great interviews, great matches. I'd be hard-pressed to say he's not the second coming of Ric Flair.
I still think it's Triple H, but
if Triple H can stay healthy.
Yeah.
The thing is, Hunter is a little injury prone.
Yeah,
but Angle has nursing some injuries right now. But if he stays on his game, only time will tell. To use another old cliche.
Well, I guess we're going to return. We're going to come back with our rant. So please come back.
For the 3rd week in a row, I think, maybe 4th, I'm not sure. I'm going to start the rants off this weekend. I usually take this time to complain about something, and I never really give credit to anything, so I'm going to do a little bit of both this week. And what I'd like to give credit to, hold on to your seats, folks, is Billy Gunn and Big Show. Not that their ring work has improved at all, because it hasn't. It still sucks. But them together, drawing off of one another, basically with real life things about Billy Gunn being unmotivated, not caring about working, the Big Show not being motivated, not caring about working, not losing any weight. It makes for great TV. From WWF New York, when they were, I think that was on Raw this past Monday, when they were sitting there eating, and Billy Gunn talking to the Big Show about working out. Oh, I worked out. Well, look behind you. Your weight's back. I mean, it was just classic stuff. My plea to the WWF, don't let them anywhere near a ring. Just keep them at WWF New York as permanent hosts, and it'll make for great TV. And the other thing I want to complain about defiantly is one Mick Foley, who every time I see him, he drops a little in value as far as in my eyes go. Mick Foley is, without a doubt, obviously a legend. But every time I see him pawning a book off, or refereeing 2 matches that mean absolutely nothing, or saying about how Dewey got a new figure in the other day in the mail and cut his eye out of his head, or whatever the hell happens with his family, Mick Foley drops a little bit in value, in my eyes. I want to remember Mick Foley for his great, well, good matches, Hell in the Cell, matches with Triple H that made Triple H the star who he is today, and I want to see less of Mick Foley on a motorcycle with a leather jacket busting out of his pants. And I just don't want to see him anymore in sweatpants with the hole blown out of the ass and the crotch. Mick Foley, you're a legend. Let's just keep it at that. Stay off TV unless you're going to do commentary. And by the way, be the commentator for Raw. Just color.
Getting tired of Michael Cole.
Michael Cole's not even worth my time anymore.
I know. Well, speaking of something that's not worth our time, this is going to be the last time that I ran about the PTC, wrestling violence or wrestling death. Tom posted a great column on the website that you have to check out. Yeah, good job. A 9-year-old boy was killed by, doesn't have the age of the guy that killed him, but he was 225 pounds. Now, I'm willing to bet that there's a bit of a weight difference there.
And so, age difference.
Yeah. So the PTC, thanks. So the PTC issued a statement, thank goodness, because without them, our world would be nothing. They issued a statement saying, well, how many times do these wrestling deaths have to occur before we're going to wake up and realize that they don't take responsibility for their actions, blah, 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 whatever. We talked about it last week. The WWF has a commercial out. Do not try this at home. It's in big red letters. They show guys bleeding. They show guys getting hurt. I don't know what else they want them to do, unless that means stop doing what they're doing. And that's not going to happen. Vince McMahon's not going to shut down a billion-dollar organization just to appease somebody from the PTC. Now, my other point is a story that moved on the AP I'd say probably about 3 or 4 days ago. A 4-month-old boy was killed by a 43-year-old man who put cocaine in his milk bottle. Yeah, it's lovely. Now, the thing of it is, it's a tragedy, and it's something that, God only knows why it happened. But where was the PTC to, issue a statement about this? Or maybe have someone from the PTC, their leader, L. Brent Bonzel, or whatever his name is, have him issue a statement saying, how many times? Let's blame the movie Traffic. It's about drug trafficking and things of that sort. Let's take that Oscar away from that best director. Let's do things like that. Well, you know why? They will never do anything like that because wrestling's treated a different way than movies and entertainment, even though wrestling's the same thing. This is the last time I'm going to say anything about the PTC. Bottom line, they're the first people to treat wrestling as being fake, but they're the last people to actually say, it's entertainment, blah, blah, blah. They treat it as if it's real, and it's not. It's entertainment, just like a movie. Wrestling is not responsible for every kind of accident that happens in a household.
Speaking of people who aren't responsible for accidents, luckily Rob Van Dam wasn't responsible for any this past weekend. I've taken him to task in the past about being a sloppy worker and about not having a whole lot of psychology and transition to his game, and he doesn't. I'm not changing any of that. But I would like to compliment him on having just a great match with Jeff Hardy this past weekend at the pay-per-view. Another guy who is not known for wrestling and psychology and transition and things like that. But I'll give Van Dam credit. He did a good job. He hit a lot of his moves. He didn't look sloppy. Other than that spot that we talked about earlier in the show when they tried to run the dasher boards, the spot that never works. But that's great. Rob Van Dam had a very good opening weekend. He was psycho over with the crowd. And I think that's got to give the WWF a little bit of motivation to really start pushing this guy. Now, here's the thing. As good as Rob Van Dam looked, and as good as, as his matches were, and as much as all the fans are now coming out saying, see, we told you so, we told you so, that's great. But let's see him do these same things against Billy Gunn or against Hugh Morris. Well, I guess he wouldn't fight Hugh Morris, but let's say like an Albert, somebody like that. Somebody whose style wouldn't necessarily complement Rob Van Dam's. That is where we're going to find out how good a wrestler he is. Everybody talks about how Van Dam should be main eventing. He should be up there with Triple H and Kurt Angle. Well, Kurt Angle and Triple H can go out and have a good match with anybody. Anybody. I don't think you can say that for Rob Van Dam. Yeah, he can do his aerial moves, and yeah, he can do the different things like that. But if you can't help your opponent have a good match with you, if you can't go in there with somebody whose skills aren't the same as yours, or maybe he isn't quite as athletically gifted as you are, and have a good match, then you're not on their level yet. And I don't think he's there yet. He may be with some time, but I think with some seasoning and getting him in there with some different guys who actually are better wrestlers than they are aerial specialists, then I think you're going to start seeing Rob Van Dam come into what he can really be. Well,
Excellent.
ready?
Okay, well, I read a column. It's on Sundays. You can pick it up on the newsstands or you can read it on the web. It's www.triblive.com/sports. I'm going to write this week about the possibility of a new national promotion. A guy out of Indiana is starting up a group trying to sign some talent, so I'm going to take a look at what you can expect from this group.
And my column is called Sharpshooter. You can read it in the Daily News. You can pick it up on newsstands everywhere right now, or you can pick it up on the internet at www.dailynewsmckeysport.com. Check out the columnist section, and that's where you can find me. And I have a couple more details about that conference call with Jim Ross that Rennie and I both participated in last week.
And once again, as always, the website, prowrestlingreview.com. Check out each of our features on there. I tend to write about once every week, and I know you guys keep up with it usually the same. Check out the questions, check out everything, check out the pictures that are old. Just check out everything. And also, in addition, check out the trivia, answer those 3 questions, and answer this particular question right here. What was Mankind's first WWF pay-per-view match? Who was it against? And for what the hell, extra credit, what pay-per-view was it at? So answer those 3, answer that one, send us email, find it right on the website, ideas for the show, anything of that sort, death threats. We accept everything.
Shoot something else up. For all the local promoters, for all the people who write us letters and say you don't have enough local stuff on your show, here's a message to the local promoters right now. Send us email, prowrestlingreview@mailcity.com. If you've got a